Today on episode 24 of the podcast, we're talking about Sony Pictures purchasing the Alamo Drafthouse cinema chain, and could we be seeing some more Ted Lasso coming? We'll also break down the third episode of Star Wars The Acolyte, and review Pixar's latest Inside Out 2. I'm Brad, he's Josh, and welcome to We'll Bring the Popcorn.
So our first news story of the week comes from Netflix. We have Yahya Abdul-Mateen is going to star in a basically television take on Denzel Washington's series Man of Fire. It's going to be on Netflix. I'm excited about that. If you don't know who Yahya Abdul-Mateen is, he was in Aquaman 1, Aquaman 2. He's also going to be in Wonder Man, I believe.
He is Wonder Man.
Yes, he is. He's actually Wonder Man himself. So it's exciting to see Netflix pick up that. I loved Man on Fire. I love Denzel Washington's movie. I'm excited to see them pick it up as a series and kind of, because I feel like after that movie, there was a lot more on the bone that they could do storyline-wise, but I'm excited to see where they take it.
Yeah, it was a great movie, and it's interesting to see yet another Denzel Washington movie going to series, because, of course, we had, I think it's like 5th or 6th season now with Queen Latifah's The Equalizer has been around. Yeah, to see another one of his films going to series, is hopefully they do a good job with it. I haven't checked out The Equalizer, just kind of never piqued my interest with it. I enjoyed the movie series. I wasn't a huge fan of them, but I love Denzel.
Yeah.
But Man of Fire was one I was a big fan of, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do with this as a series.
Yeah, The Equalizer's pretty good. I'm not like an avid watcher of it or anything, but I've seen a few episodes, and what I like that I've enjoyed. It's just one of those that seems like it comes on when I'm trying to watch like 10 other things, and it's hard to keep up with.
So much to watch.
It's one of those like I meant to start recording it when it came out and just completely forgot, and then it got like 2 seasons in, and I'm like, I'm sure I'll catch up with it on streaming eventually, and probably go down a rabbit hole of watching like 3 or 4 seasons in a weekend or something, and going crazy. But yeah,
that was something similar to me, because I saw like the season premieres, like season 5. I thought it started last year or something.
Yeah.
Like we've already got 5 seasons or 6 seasons, whatever it is now. Like it just quickly gone through a ton. But yeah, hopefully Man on Fire, like of course it's 5 or 6 seasons in. That one's doing really well. Hopefully Man on Fire does equally as well.
I hope so too. Like I said, I'm excited to see where they take that story and kind of expand on it based on the movie, and whether it's going to be like a continuation based on how the movie ended, or just kind of going back to the beginning and maybe starting in like a prequel. I'm not entirely sure yet, because we don't know like the genesis of the story, but it's still exciting that that's being taken on. So I'm ready for it.
And speaking on new things being taken on, we've got yet another kind of classic low cult type of following film with practical magic. You know, that starred Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman, came out around 1998. It's getting a sequel. It looks like they're both in talks to come back to star, to produce it as well. So, again, they're going back to the well, finding whatever they can do. And I know my wife is looking forward to seeing another practical magic. But it's again, as we've talked about a lot, there's just so much that they're just, instead of something new, they're going back to, all right, what can we make a sequel of now?
And you got to wonder if the audience is there for it, right? Or if they'll embrace it. But I mean, I remember enjoying the movie, too. It's one of those that I probably haven't seen in 20 years at this point, but it'll definitely be interesting to see what kind of story they tell. It's what we say, like, you can go back to that well, but is the story right? Is it going to be good? And the jury's still kind of out on it, so I'm going to kind of reserve judgment until I see what they do with it, but it's one of those things as well that we keep talking about. Has there been too much time between the last movie being made and this one to where, one, is there an audience for it? 2, is there going to be a good enough story to tell? A lot of times, it's a crapshoot, really. Like, it really is.
Yeah, could it be trying to capitalize? All right, they brought Hocus Pocus back again. They're looking to potentially make a third of that. Or are we trying to just capitalize of things of the late 90s now and see if we can, catch fire again? But I know my wife is excited. Hopefully it'll be enjoyable for her. Like I said, I'm the same. I haven't seen it in quite a long time. I remember it,
sure,
but it's been quite a long time since I've watched the original.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll see what they do with it. But that's it sounds like something that people could be interested in seeing. So obviously, you put Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman back in something. There's a pre-built audience, and for that I think it's going to make the movie pretty successful no matter what.
Just toss in a Keanu Reeves for good measure and get him and Sandra Bullock back, and just like, here you go.
Love it. I'm looking forward to that too. But one thing I'm really looking forward to that's got me really excited, I know both you and I are, one of our favorite shows of all time has been Ted Lasso. And there's been kind of a toss-up. Are they going to do another season? Are they not? Well, apparently the CEO of WBTV has come out and said that they are in potential talks for doing Ted Lasso season 4, with the caveat that Jason Sudeikis has expressed interest in possibly doing it if the story is right? So that's kind of what I feel like we beat that drum all the time here, but it seems like he's on board, and that, for one, has got me very excited.
Yeah, I like that his comments that if they do it, he wants to make sure it's the right idea, that it's done right, and that's kind of what we've asked about all of it with Shogun, with anything else that's now going to continue. Like, we loved what they did. Of course, we want more.
Sure.
But should we go back to it? And, Ted Lasso ended kind of in a weird way just from how they promoted it. Sure. It was never really promoted that was the series finale, even though, like, Jason Sudeikis and Brett Goldstein and a few others were talking like, yeah, this is the last one, but Apple, like, never said this is the series finale. This is the final one. So it kind of left it in the air. It also left open for maybe a female team or something else to go forward. And like I said, I love Ted Lasso. I actually just started a rewatch of it. I'm about 4 episodes in. I was like, I got to rewatch Ted Lasso, especially after hearing that news story. I'm like, all right, I'm doing a rewatch, checking it out again. It's
so good. I know we still talk about it now, like, even though the series has been wrapped up for a year and a half at this point, and it's a show that you and I both hold very dearly, because it was one of those that, like, on the premise of it alone, you're like, is it going to be good? It's about a soccer team. And it's really not. Like, yeah, there's a soccer team involved, but it's really not about soccer. It's about, mental health, and, there's soccer elements thrown in as well, but it's really a character-driven, story. And I love that. And I absolutely love Brett Goldstein in particular. I know we both love the character of Roy Kent. And yeah, exactly. And I'm excited to, go see his comedy tour that he's doing that will be in town next month, and I'm very excited to see that. But the fact that they are coming back to the well on this, and potentially even doing like another spinoff series, which, like you said, could be potentially that female-led team that would be awesome as well. I'm very much excited to see them going back to that particular well, because in the 3 seasons they did, it is so good. It's such good television. And like you said, they left it in a way that, like, if you saw the entire series, it could have been a satisfactory ending, in my opinion. But there's still stories to be told there. And I'm excited that they could potentially be doing it.
It does feel like if they do return to it, he might be, Jason Sudeikis, maybe more of an executive producer, because it left Ted in a pretty decent way. Like, do we need more of his story? Is it going to continue on with the club and the team and see kind of what we're going there? And I know Hannah Waddingham did a interview not too long ago, or last week, I think it was, saying there will always be a part of her that's just itching and ready to go back to Ted. Like, Ted Lasso was such an amazing part of her life. She's like, if they ask me, I'm there. Like, she's ready to come back. So, and I think most of the cast is going to be that way. So if they do go back to it, like I said, hopefully they do a good job of it, but it seems like everybody would be ready to return.
Absolutely.
Moving on to Zack Snyder. So we've heard for a while now that his Rebel Moon films are going to get a director's cut. So we've talked that there's been talk that it's going to be a little bit more violent. There's going to be a lot more clips. It's going to be a little bit more sexy, and like exactly what he means by that.
Sure.
So he's finally announced we're going to see those out August 2nd on Netflix. They have new names. So Chapter 1 is now Chalice of Blood, and Chapter 2 is Curse of Forgiveness. So, got the extended editions, got new names. I've watched the first one so far. I was okay with it. It wasn't something that really made me want to jump immediately into the second one here, but I probably will finally get around to watching the second one and checking out the director's cuts when they release.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I haven't watched either one of them yet. It's one of those, like, if you look at the movie, the run times on them are like 3 hours. So it's one of those, like, I'll get to it, but I don't have an opinion on them just yet. I know they're very divisive online, which just about everything Zack Snyder does is, but I do when you say a director's cut and Zack Snyder, I immediately jump into the Justice League Snyder cut that everybody fought so hard for and we finally got. So I don't know why every time I hear that, I go back to that. But no, it's exciting that they're getting, these director's cuts for these movies, so you can get a little bit more than what you got in the original Netflix versions. And like you said, I plan on watching both director's cuts eventually too. So it's exciting to see that they've got, you know, a date set for that and everything that people can check out.
Yeah, and just gotta hope it's good and it's not just throwing in sex and violence just to throw in more sex and violence, because that sells, so let's just throw it in there. But yeah, hopefully it's a good thing. He seems to have a good relationship with Netflix where he can kind of do basically what he wants. So he seems to be pretty set with them right now, and hopefully both of them are solid. And I like I said, I really want to finish the movie, you know, finish both chapters and see what that's like before I dive into this director's cut. So I still got a little bit of time. Got a couple months before those are out to dive in and see if they're worth going back for the director's cuts.
Yeah, definitely they're definitely worth at least checking out, and you know, we both plan on doing that eventually. A series that I'm very much looking forward to is The Penguin, which is the Colin Farrell spinoff of the most recent Robert Pattinson Batman films, where he was just absolutely brilliant as the Penguin. I'm very excited for this series. It is finally coming out in September on Max. We finally got a release date for that. We also got a release date for Creature Commandos that's coming out in December. That's the first real James Gunn-led DC TV series that's coming out that I'm very excited for, too, to kind of kick off this, you know, new James Gunn era of DC. So you've got two different DC properties here, but, you know, I've been very much looking forward to this Penguin series for a minute.
Oh, yeah, the Penguin. We've talked about it a lot, that how Colin Farrell, like, you can look in the eyes of that character and see it's him. Like, you can see it's Colin's eyes, but past that, like, he disappears into the prosthetics and with his accent and everything else. Like, he did a fantastic job on the Batman, so giving him a whole series to really let loose on the Penguin, I can't wait for it.
And it's got this, just based on the trailers that we've gotten for it so far, it's given me a little bit of Sopranos with a little bit, I want to say, more CGI action into it maybe, but it's very much got that mobster, like, Penguin type feel to it, you know what I mean? Like, he's definitely more of a Sopranos type villain than you know, some of the previous Penguin depictions that we've seen from DC. So it's kind of a cool take on that character too, and like I said, I can't wait fast enough for this show to show up.
Yeah, less creature, more gangster.
Right.
And
yeah,
that's exciting to see that part. Creature Commandos, I'm not that familiar with. Sure. It's not a property of DC's that I know that well. So I'm looking forward to it because, as you know, if you don't remember, DC did announce with their new universe, if, you know, say an actor voices a cartoon character, an animated series character, they're going to play that character in live action as well. So yeah, this is kicking off, you know, a lot of people that we're probably going to be seeing in live action in the next 4 or 5 years with Creature Commando. So it is an important series for DC going forward here, with the first, you know, film being Superman next year, that you've got this series kind of kicking it all off in December, and hopefully it's good.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of eyes on it, and I know it's going to get a lot of attention, at least right out the gate. I'm hoping they knock it out of the park because they are going kind of all in on James Gunn at this point. So if this initial series doesn't do well, you got to wonder what that's going to bode for this long-term plan that they've got in DC. And DC's got a long way to go to kind of win back a lot of goodwill from people for, you know, kind of the hot mess that's been their properties outside of maybe the animated stuff that they've done for the last few years. And it's a big deal for them, and like you said, you're not that familiar with them. I'm not either, so I kind of like that, so I don't have any preconceived notions about these stories going in, and I can kind of go into it with a little bit more of an open mind, and I hope that bodes well for the success of the show, because, you know, we want these stories to do well. We want, you know, we talk about Marvel, and Marvel's far from perfect. We talk about them a lot, but they've got a formula that works for the most part, and DC's still kind of finding their way, and I hope they finally find it.
Yeah, and we were kind of had one of those films that they'd recently put out, what was it, last year with Blue Beetle, that it was kind of the end of the old regime, but kind of talk like it's going to be part of the new, and they just announced a Blue Beetle animated series, which will somewhat continue the movie. So I guess we got a fuller answer on that, if Blue Beetle is going to continue on or not, or if that was a one-off and just kind of dead in the water because of the change. But it looks like, at least in animated form, we're going to get Blue Beetle going on.
Yeah, I'm excited for that because I know you and I, we saw the movie. We were both pleasantly surprised by how much we actually enjoyed the film. And we're like, you know, it's kind of a shame it's coming at the tail end of this, you know, run of DC films before James Gunn takes over. And we really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really well done movie, and I'm excited to see that it's taking on, you know, a continuation in animated form. And I don't think we got any news as far as like who's doing voices, if the people that were, in the movie are doing the voices for the animated series.
I'd assume with what I mentioned with Creature Commandos, if they're trying to match it up, that we should get hopefully most of the actors back for it.
I would love that, because like I said, they did a great job, and hopefully they get a chance to continue in those roles, because they all seem to be open to it if they wanted to move forward with it. Like, they seem to all have a great time making the movies. So if they could come back, I'm into it, man. I'm here for it.
Oh yeah, hopefully it's going to be fun. We get some, George Lopez was so crazy over the top as what the crazy uncle in there, but it was a fun ride overall. Kind of Blue Beetle's kind of Power Ranger-ish kind of type of character. He's got this super powered crazy suit and everything, and there's still a lot that they can do with that story, since it's a very young character and they have a lot they could explore. So it is kind of interesting they decided to go the animation route instead of either a series or another movie. At least what we know right now, just the animated series is what's going to continue it, and we'll see how it fits into the bigger picture.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it for sure. One of the things that we both were looking forward to that kind of kicked off this past week was we finally got season 4 of The Boys. Had their first 3 episodes drop on Amazon. I've watched them already. They're fantastic. It's just they're firing on all cylinders right now. And I know we talked about last week, they were talking about doing more seasons of the show. Well, the executive producer of the show came out this week and said, no, it's actually going to be done with season 5, but it does appear that we're going to get some kind of spin-offs and other things away from it, but it seems like he's going to stick to that 5-season plan all along.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird sequence that he's talking up. Oh, I guess my 5-season plan is out the door because we didn't expect it to be as popular, but I have a feeling it's because Amazon wanted more, and he had to probably go in and talk to him. Well, I want the main series to end at 5 still. Like, I have this idea, I have this story I wanted to get out. Let me tell that story, then we'll look at more spinoffs, more Gen V, and I figured that's what happened there. Like, he's talking up because that's kind of what Amazon wanted, not what he wanted. Yeah. And then he was able to come to an agreement with them. All right, let's end it with 5, and let's move on with other stuff. And I'm glad with that, because as we talked about, if you try to stretch stuff too much, especially if you have an end in mind and you take it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more seasons, then is that ending even relevant anymore?
Right. Yeah, and we talk about it all the time. If you feel like you've got a story arc in mind and you're comfortable with leaving it there and not just stretching it out because your show is so popular, the studio wants to throw a bunch of money at you, I respect that. You know what I mean? Because it's taking the quote unquote easy way out would be to take the big check and make more and do more, and you may burn yourself out creatively just to push out more content because they're paying you to do so. But he's protecting his artistic vision in this, and I really respect it.
47 seasons of The Boys coming right up.
Right, and it's a huge hit for Amazon, so I get why they want to do more. And I know Gen V was extremely popular. It's coming back for its 2nd season that they're filming now, and hopefully they get several more if they want to keep going to that, because you can kind of start recycling through younger soups at that point based on the premise of that show, and then the other potential spinoffs that could come from that as well. But I like the fact that they're wrapping it up, because if you're following the show like we have, you see kind of this, it's all kind of coming to a head. So once you hit that point, where beyond that can you really go? And I respect that they're willing to stop it at 5, because it feels like they have something that they feel will, just leave a lasting impression and not drag it out forever.
Even though I haven't been able to dive into the latest season yet, it did feel even at the end of season 3, like how much longer they're going to be able to keep everything apart. Like you kind of got close and now it's back away. You can't keep doing that. There's a lot of series that have suffered from that. And Walking Dead is one, because as I mentioned with Negan, that storyline, you just had so much like, all right, they've captured Negan. Oh, Negan escapes, so now he's torturing the group. Oh, the group gets revenge. It captured Negan, and it just was back and forth and back and forth. And it's like, there's only a couple times you can do that before just because, all right, now you're just dragging out too long. So yeah, I'm happy that they have decided that the main story of The Boys will end. And we actually got a little bit of information on it. It's going to be 8 episodes long, and they're going to start filming in November. But he actually said it's probably going to take through mid of next year to film those 8 episodes. So that's sounding like a pretty beefy, solid season that they need a lot of time to get into. So it's probably not going to be till 2026 that we see the final season of The Boys.
Which is crazy, but I feel like it's going to be worth the wait, because they are taking the time to do it the way they want to do it and give us something really quality, like you said, that's going to leave a lasting impression. That I like that they're going to leave us wanting potentially more versus giving us too much, and we'll be like, all right, you did too much, So I'm excited to see what they do, and this show just blew away any expectations for it that I've had, and it continues to deliver quality in the 4th season now, and I'm excited for you to dive into it. I think eventually we'll do like a season 4 breakdown here. I believe probably when it's done, but yeah, I'm excited for where they're going with it, and taking some comfort in knowing that there is, a stopping point that they're ready to reach.
Yeah, I've thought of The Boys kind of similar as I did with Game of Thrones, especially in the early seasons, as you just have no idea what you're getting into when you watch an episode. There is nothing that's off the table. Yep. Anything can happen. Anyone can die. Just anything can go. So it's just like you do not know what you're what's waiting on you for each episode. And yeah, that's exciting because it's like, all right, it's not cookie cutter. You don't. There's definitely some stuff that's happened in this series that I'm like, how in the world did they get away with that? Or who wrote that? Why would you write that? Why would you do that? But like,
it works.
Hey, it worked for him.
It works.
Keeping in the comic book space here is a couple stories on Marvel. So we got Michael Green, who wrote Logan and Blade Runner 2049. He's going to write the script for Marvel's Midnight Suns film, which is exciting that that's getting some more traction. But it's also interesting going with some other news with Blade, because he wrote the last script treatment of Blade, and now they've lost a director for Blade. Now they've brought somebody else on to, I guess, do some script polishing. So it's like, I think 6 writers, 2 directors, and we even got Ali's lawyer is now talking about like, well, the deal we signed was back in 2019 and nothing has been filmed yet. So that makes me really feel like he's looking for his exit out of Blade.
It's cursed. We've joked about it now, but I really feel that movie is cursed. It's like the cursed Marvel project. Like it's gone through so many different, like you said, so many different people have put their hands on this, and the main actor, who Mahershala Ali, is an incredible actor. He's you're leaving an incredible actor dangling on a hook here for 5 years. Like you said, he agreed to this role 5 years ago. I mean, the Eternals kind of was the, lack of a better term, introduction of him to it, even though you really just hear his voice. But even that's been a few years now. It's been a couple years since that film came out. And it's one of those, like, is it ever going to get done? We don't know. And then when we finally get it, is it going to be good? Like, that's the fear, right? But it is kind of a weird dynamic to see him transition from working on the Blade script to writing Midnight Suns, because a lot of times when they leave a project, they leave that studio altogether, and he doesn't work on anything else. But the fact that he's working on Midnight Suns is awesome. If you know anything about the Midnight Suns story, that is really cool. It deals with a lot more darker sections of Marvel, where you get some of these darker characters, like a Ghost Rider, like a
like Blade,
which could be involved as well, or like Doctor Strange or Moon Knight or some of these other characters that we've been introduced to, but could be like a Dark Avengers kind of thing.
That's what's weird about it, though, is because they announced that he's writing it. But they've brought someone else in on his Blade script to do some, we don't know if it's a complete rewrite or if it's just some tweaks and edits, but like you're hiring him for another film that involves Blade, but then you're having someone else touch up his script for Blade. Like, yeah, it does definitely feel cursed, like something's going on. Like, can we get Jordan Peele back in the building and hand it over to him? But we also had Chad Stahelski, who did John Wick. He threw out earlier this year that I would love to do Blade. I'd like to take it on. Like, imagine a John Wick like Blade film. Like I think he would be able to handle Blade so extremely well. So get Chad, get Jordan, get one of those, get them on Blade, and get that film made. Like, get that figured out, because you've got 2 potential big directors. One that's already said, I want to do it. Get him in there. Let him let loose on Blade.
Yeah, for the life of me, I'll never figure out why they can't seem to figure this one out, because they've been taking so much extra care with other characters. Like, now that they got their hands on Fantastic Four and the X-Men, you see the effort they're putting into that. And Blade, for whatever reason, feels like the redheaded stepchild of the Marvel properties at the moment. Like, they can't seem to figure it out. And I hope they do course correct it, because Blade, like, we love the Wesley Snipes films, but it's a really cool character that, when done right, could really bring, I think, a cool dynamic to Marvel a little bit. It could make Marvel. I think it could make Marvel a little more like hip and cool, you know, like with a really well told vampire story.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because Wesley Snipes' Blade, like especially the first one, we know the second one was decent, the third one was a bit of a mess, but it's a mix of Wesley Snipes dramatics and bad script and other stuff. But the first Blade was huge for Marvel. Absolutely. Like, it was a big hit, and it really helped. Like, it wasn't the kickoff of the MCU, you know, that was Iron Man, but this really, you know, the first Blade really helped, you know, propel them forward with their movies. Because, I mean, you had a kind of a failed Punisher movie with Dolph Lundgren that really didn't see much light of the day. Like, I still haven't gone back and watched it. Like, you can find it out there now, but it's one they don't really talk about. But Blade was so huge for him to really, he was one of the first big comic book film movies for them. And it's just been such a mess, like 4 or 5 years of just not being able to figure out how to get this movie made.
And I hope they eventually get it. They eventually get it right, because, like I said, it's got the potential to be really, really big for them. And, you know, as they're leaning a little bit more into the R-rated stuff with like Deadpool and stuff, hopefully, you know, getting a hold of Blade like that and making an R-rated Blade would be awesome. I would love to see it.
And you're also kind of almost running out of time, because if he's going to have anything to do potentially with Avengers films or any of those storylines based on, because we don't really know how he's going to incorporate it into the MCU other than, you know, potentially in the Midnight Suns. Is that going to be taking part in a kind of another area of the MCU? But we've got the Avengers movies coming up, at least the first one. So if he's going to have any part of those films, kind of need to get his film out there first.
Yeah, you got to get on it, and we'll see. It's one of those, like, I'm kind of losing faith by the day with all these stories that keep coming out of people leaving, and, you know, once you lose your star, I think you kind of got to scrap it and reboot it later, like at a later point, maybe get through these Avengers films and maybe come back to it eventually. I don't know. I don't know what the plan is there. We're not getting a ton of information other than just people not being a part of the project anymore.
Left. Okay, we're up to like 8 people have left now.
Right. I think it may be time eventually to just punt on it, let Mahershala Ali go do something else, and maybe if the time's right, come back to it, or maybe find another actor to play that role, which is a little disappointing because I think he'd do a really good job on it. But if it's not going to get made, like, they're going to lose the entire thing, I think.
He just signed on to the new Jurassic World movie, which is now filming, so he's already filming another franchise that's had, 2 movies and now a reboot before Blade has gotten off the ground.
It's a hot mess, man. It's a hot mess.
It's crazy.
One of the more interesting stories that came out this week, though, was Sony Pictures has acquired the Alamo House Theater Studios.
Yeah, the Alamo Drafthouse.
Yeah, the Alamo Drafthouse Theaters. Like, it's been so long since a major studio has owned a theater chain. I believe it was illegal up until just a few years ago for a studio to own that. Obviously, for business purposes, I understand why it was illegal, and they finally did away with it. But this is kind of a big deal to see, you know, how they take that theater chain and really what they do with it, because it's a real slippery slope when you start talking about movie theater chains and studios hooking up. Like, does that limit potential options if that's the only theater in your area that you only get Sony films, or how's that going to work? I'm still a little confused as to how that's all going to work.
We really don't have Alamo Drafthouse here in our area. I think Louisville's the closest. Might be. We went to one out in D.C. when we did a baseball trip, and we saw the latest Indiana Jones movie there. And I really enjoyed it because it started off, like, it had an interesting design and everything to it and layout. But, you know, it started off the movie with facts and funny kind of Mystery Science Theater 3000 type of, we're giving you these funny notes about the whole Indiana Jones series, and they're very serious, as we love, about no talking in the theaters. Your phone's away, you're not talking. Like, they tell you right on screen, we're going to kick you out if you talk during the movie, because they have dining at the seats. You don't talk to your waitress or waiter, whoever it is. You write it down on a piece of paper, hit your button, they grab the paper and walk off. Like, you don't talk to them, and it was kind of nice and refreshing. So maybe Sony can help expand them into more areas, and we get one a little closer that we can kind of check out more often. But yeah, you just never know with a theater chain being owned by a major studio if they're going to make any major changes. It feels like they'd be dumb to block any studios from being at the theaters, but you never know. Like, it's just Sony all the time. No other movies other than maybe Marvel that they're in partnership with are just going to show Venom nonstop in
Which would be crazy to see. You go into a theater and it's like Venom, 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 Venom. But yeah, it's an interesting business strategy that I'd love to see what their plans are for it. Now we just got the news that they're going to purchase it, but we don't know exactly what they're going to do with it yet. Mm-hmm. So it is curious to see what they do plan to do with these, and does that lead to other studios taking a look at some of these bigger chains and maybe working on, some type of partnership or buyout mm-hmm. or something? Because, with the theaters, we've noticed there's been a kind of an ebb and flow of, business, and like we've talked about movies underperforming at the box office. Does that mean that studios buying these theaters helps that? I don't know, but it's going to be an interesting case to see if anybody else gets the idea to start looking into these other chains, because it would be crazy to see somebody just like scoop up a big chain like an AMC or a Cinemark or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because we know theaters are still kind of trying to recover from COVID and all the shutdowns and everything. We're just not seeing people going back to movies as they were. So does a major studio owning one help it, hurt it, or kind of, I hope they're going to pour some money into it and help revitalize movie theaters, and it's going to help them, but it's going to help all the chains. But yeah, you could see, are we going to look at Disney gobbling up one? That would be my next guess of one that could potentially buy one, because they own everything. So why not own a movie theater chain? Yeah. But yeah, it was kind of weird to me that it was illegal. I didn't really look into all of it, but I know they were looking for, it was just didn't want a monopoly, didn't want all this, and didn't want all the fighting between, every studio has their own movie theater chain. So, all right, we got to go here to see a Disney film. We have to go here to see Warner Brothers. We have to go over there to see Sony. But it's intriguing. Like, I don't really know what got them to want to go after a movie theater chain, especially Alamo. Like, I've heard of them. They're a big chain, or a big name at least, but I'm not sure what got them to go after them, unless they just really needed the help to keep going.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to find out a little bit more about the why behind the purchase, and then, like you said, the business plan for it, because it could lead to, like we've said, more studios trying to look into those types of things, and it's one of those. The theater's business is ever changing at this point, and that's the next step. Is it a step to something bigger? We don't know, so the jury's still out.
Yeah, to go back to Disney a little bit, it was kind of surprising to hear they have signed a first look deal with Dwayne Johnson, $7 production. So pretty much for films and streaming, they get the first look at everything he does. But it could also mean that Dwayne Johnson could be in anything and everything Marvel or Star Wars or Disney. Like, I think this officially makes Dwayne Johnson a Disney princess.
It probably does. I mean, it's a big deal for that studio as well, because, like you said, he's going to have a very nice financial backing for all of his projects now, and I know his star power's taken a little bit of a hit maybe over the last year or two with the whole DC thing, and like some of the stories that, whether you believe them or not, have come out about some of the interactions he's had with some people on sets and stuff, but he's a guy that you can bank on going to the box office and it making a good amount of money. So his star power is still really huge, and the fact that he's signed a deal with Disney is just as huge, right? I know a lot of people are looking forward to the new Moana film that's coming out later this year that he's leading his voice to, and potentially, like you said, does he join the MCU? Does he join the Star Wars franchises? I can't imagine Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as a Jedi. I'm sorry, I just
ripping the sleeves off of his Jedi robe,
looking abnormally larger than everybody else that's in that universe. But
to see Ahsoka jump on his back and just ride into battle,
he's gonna be like that's. I'm not going to go there. But
it is interesting to see him go with Disney, because we know there was a lot of fallout with DC. He fought with them a lot about Black Adam, and that was another one kind of like Blade, and it didn't really turn out that great, that it took multiple years to get Black Adam done. And then, he also fought to get Henry Cavill to show up in that extra credit scene, which then also blew up because, all right, yeah, Henry's not coming back. That's the last you're seeing Adam. You're not part of this. Like, kind of just blew up with DC. So where does he go? He goes to Disney, where Marvel lives now. And there was rumors for a while, and this could strengthen them more of him being Apocalypse.
Yeah, and that would be a character I think that could be suited for him because Apocalypse is a big hulking type, villain that I think he would probably do really well with, and I think he could pull that off as long as he doesn't look like Ivan Ooze like we keep joking about. But yeah, I could see a role like that for him, but it's a big deal for them to have that deal with the studio, so it sounds like he's going to have the opportunity to get a lot more projects made, and I'd love to see that work into even like some theme park stuff and some other things that could potentially come out of that deal. So more power to him, man. That's a good deal for him.
Yeah, you could see him showing up for like Shaq with the cruise lines. You could have The Rock for the Disney cruise lines and have him, the Jungle Cruise tie into the Disney Starline or whatever I forget what they're calling it for the cruise ships and stuff. Like you could have Dwayne Johnson just plastered everywhere that Disney exists. And, is he going to be an ESPN anchor? As well. He could just be anywhere and everywhere. Like, this is kind of a big deal for him because you see, like, Margot Robbie signed a big deal with Warner Brothers. Kind of makes sense because of how much she's done for Warner Brothers over the years. And, past Moana, that I think that's really, I guess there were some Fox properties that he's done before, but Moana, doing Moana 2 plus the live action, I guess they looked like, hey, we want to do a whole lot more with you. And it's going to be really intriguing to see what they actually end up doing with him and how much they utilize him. Yeah, and that kind of, speaking of showing up everywhere, the movie that's showing up everywhere that everybody's talking about, we've been talking about it ad nauseum since we started the podcast, is Deadpool and Wolverine. And I kind of wanted to lead into the last story. It's not so much like any news or anything breaking, but it appears that the early trackings for, just people buying up so many pre-sale tickets and everything, it's potentially looking like it's going to be the highest grossing R-rated film of all time, period. Like, even the highest opening weekend ever for a film. Like, there's so much anticipation for this. They said it's tracking somewhere between $200+ million just domestically for an opening weekend, which is insane. Yeah, so you got to think 300-400 million could be potential for an opening weekend of an R-rated Deadpool movie. Like, I know there is a ton of excitement, but even that got me like, when they release tickets that early, they're expecting a big box office, but we've still got another month, a little over a month to go before that movie's out. So you can walk up tickets and people who get it the last minute. So, I mean, could we see a $300 million opening domestic weekend? That there is a huge potential for that, and I can't remember the last time we've seen the box office be that big. I mean, we're going to talk about Inside Out 2 here in a little bit. It's looking to have a big weekend this weekend. Sure, yeah. Deadpool and Wolverine is looking to double plus that. Yeah, and it's the power of not just Marvel, but Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman combining together here to do this, something that people have been waiting for forever for this to happen. And it's finally happening, but the brilliant marketing that they're doing for the film is absolutely fantastic. Everything from the popcorn bucket to the trailers to the PSAs before the movie. I don't know if you saw it, but now there's I think it's DiGiorno frozen pizza, Deadpool and Wolverine pizzas now. I love it. It's just the branding on it is so smart. But honestly, the last film I can remember generating this much buzz going into its opening weekend was probably No Way Home. And that's talking like Avengers level box office openings for an R-rated movie. Like, make no mistake about it, it's going to be gory, it's going to be graphically violent, it's going to be hilarious, and there's going to be a ton of language in it. It's going to earn the rating big time. Like, we're getting an authentic Deadpool movie under the Disney banner, which is amazing to even think about that being a possibility. But the anticipation for it is so high that it's going to make a ton of money on par with the Avengers, which is not insignificant, I think. Oh, it's insane. And we've also heard rumblings that because it's tracking so well how they feel about Deadpool and Wolverine, that we'll probably see both of them show up in both the next Avengers movies, just because it's like, you're going to print money if you put Deadpool and Wolverine together anymore. And like, but does that mean we get R-rated Avengers movies? I don't know. I think it would probably be more cameo, but yeah, how do you have Deadpool around and keep him in check? Like, But I mean, it could also be the joke about it that he's got to watch his. All right, Disney's watching. Feige's going to be mad at me if I mess this up or something like.
I can imagine the fourth wall breaking is going to be crazy for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I'm looking forward to it so much. But it's insane that it's doing so well already. And like you said, we typically buy our movie tickets. They come out anywhere from 2 weeks to a month before the movie comes out, and it came out 2+ months before the film even drops, which just goes to show how much they're anticipating it doing, and for good reason. It's gonna easily break $1 billion.
Oh yeah, I want to see what the final box office total, because we've booked 2 showings of it just because we have that anticipation that we want to go in, watch it the first time, we want to go back in and see how many Easter eggs we missed, and just we have a feeling that we're gonna love it so much that we want to immediately go right back. So we're seeing a night showing and then an early morning showing, so we can get as much Deadpool and Wolverine as we can.
I'm so excited for that. It's going to fall on our 30th episode, which I think is so perfect for a nice round number. For our 30th episode is going to be the review of Deadpool and Wolverine. We've had that circled ever since we started the show, and we're pretty close to it now. So I'm beyond excited for it.
Yeah, and the Acolyte, which we're about to jump into a review for, it ends the week before Deadpool and Wolverine comes out. So it just lines up that may be the only thing we review that week, is just to sit there and gush and talk about Deadpool and Wolverine.
We might talk for 2 hours about the movie. I can anticipate it. It's very possible.
Very possible. But to move into our TV breakdown of this week, we do have episode 3 of Star Wars The Acolyte. So this kind of brought us back. Yeah. So the first 2 episodes gave us a ground to really be looking at of what we have going on. And now we're going back to look at the twins and kind of what happened to them and how, May ended up being the Acolyte and being this assassin who's going around trying to kill these 4 Jedi. And now we see kind of why, but there was quite a lot of questions that I was left with after this episode.
Absolutely. And I'm going to be a little candid. I was a little frustrated by the pacing of this episode. Because I felt like it was very slow. Did they need the entire episode to tell this? I don't necessarily know, but you do get that, introduction to their youth, to their life, and what happened that caused, this split where these 2 twins go their separate ways, right? So you have them being twins who feel like because they're twins and the only kids where they're growing up that they have to live similar lives, right? So there's like this expectation that they're going to join their coven and just live this life on this planet and be a part of this. I don't want to call it a cult necessarily.
It is almost. It's pretty much like a cult.
Yeah, it's kind of like a cult. And you've got one twin that wants to do this, but another twin that was like, "This isn't really for me. I kind of want to go see the galaxy at this point." And you see, the Jedi show up and have their intervention in this, but it really plays an interesting dichotomy between like they both look at both of these groups look at the Force in a different way. Like the witches are very much Force users as well, but they view it and call it something completely different from what the Jedi do. But the Jedi are like being portrayed as this I don't want to say altruistic, but in their own minds altruistic, like this is our right to test your kids to see if we can have them become Padawans and learn the ways of the Jedi. It's not exactly pitting the Jedi in the best light here.
Yeah, because they were really just sneaking around watching them. Because, I mean, you'll find out a little bit later in the episode that they show up, and they're saying it's because they, this coven shouldn't be training kids. And that's what they kind of go about their basis, but they're sneaking around watching what they're doing, and then like, hey, why don't you come be a Jedi? It's like, here, kid, have some candy. It's kind of a creepy look at the Jedi there.
It's a little hypocritical considering if you know anything about the lore of Star Wars, what do? They look for Force-sensitive kids and they train them. So it's kind of hypocritical, right? So it's giving you a different look at, the Jedi have always been portrayed as these, as kind of a moral authority, kind of always doing the right thing, for lack of a better term, but it's not exactly painting them in the best of light here. Like you said, they're very, insistent on, this is our right to test your kids kind of thing. And it's like, I don't know, man. It kind of makes me not pull for the Jedi a little bit here, which is kind of rewiring the way our brains have been trained to think about the Jedi all this time. Like, obviously there's people who root for the Sith for one reason or another. But like the Jedi are always supposed to be like the good guys, and you root for the good guys, and they don't feel as much good guy here. Like they really don't.
Yeah, I do feel like there's a lot of frustrations kind of with this episode with kind of following the story, because they do the standard when it comes to twins.
Sure.
The twins are going to look exactly alike, wearing the same thing, having the same haircut and everything. And it was kind of, I was going back and, okay, is that Osha? Is that May? Which one is, okay, one's trying to kill this little creature. Is that Osha? Is that, just because they stuck to that dynamic. All their twins, they have to look directly alike, dressed directly alike, and it kind of made it a little hard to follow at times, just because you're trying to, all right, so which one? Because it kind of boils, you see how they are as kids, you see a little bit of the Covenant, how they go together. We were introduced to Coral, who is kind of the second in command to the girl's mother, but she is actually of the race of Darth Maul, which was kind of interesting, but she was just a very angry woman, just always kind of yelling at everyone and everything at all times. Like,
yeah, it wasn't exactly portrayed the best in this episode either, but, you know, she's the one, and it creates kind of an interesting dynamic of how these kids come to be in the universe, right? So this is a coven of all female witches who these two children were created. They weren't made through conventional means, which gives a whole lot of, if you remember the story of how Anakin Skywalker came to be, was through very similar means. And, you know, it's, I don't know, man. I still don't know how to feel about the episode because the first two episodes I really liked, and this one kind of made me take a little bit of a step back for it and kind of took a hit a little bit for me in the show, because I really felt like we were getting a lot of momentum forward, and they do the one thing that drives me crazy sometimes is you push this narrative forward and then we just take like 3 steps backwards in time to kind of look at how we got to this point. And I think you could make a little bit more effective use out of it to have these as like maybe flashbacks as you're moving the narrative forward. And it feels a little bit like I don't want to call it a wasted episode, but you spend an entire episode telling the backstory of these twins, and I get it. You're supposed to understand why they are the way they are, and you get a little bit of that, but I'm still not completely satisfied with how they told it within the, like, this was the longest episode of the 3 so far, and you would figure for a story like this it wouldn't be.
Yeah, because it almost feels like we need another episode after this one to explain some stuff, because that's when I want to get into more spoiler territory here with kind of the middle to the end, because there was a lot of stuff that I just didn't like or just didn't make sense. Like, I'm not saying I hated the episode, but I felt like it could have been so much stronger. Sure. And yeah, when we get into the witches here, it definitely felt kind of more of a cult, kind of a crazy cult, because we got the girls were going to go through ascension. So this is them basically giving their life to the coven, and they're going to take over if their mother passes and all that. But when it got to that scene, so we're by this like big well out in the moonlight, and they're doing kind of a chant and dance, like that just felt so weird to me. Like, it just didn't feel right, what they were saying and their movements. And then she's like pulling force energy from the moon that's in an eclipse, or a planet in eclipse, and putting that into the children. That's like ends up leaving May with that scar on her forehead. But that whole sequence just felt so kind of odd to me. It didn't connect,
and it definitely felt a little out of place. But like you said, it kind of takes you out of it a little bit, but you kind of get where they're coming from, right? And this is how they use the Force. They call it like a thread, and they don't really feel so much the Force as like your destiny necessarily, but it's a different way of looking and viewing the Force. It feels a little bit more leaning more towards Sith-like, not necessarily Sith-like, but not using the Force in the same way that
it's definitely a different Jedi take on the Force.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'm all for like a different dynamic like that. But my whole point of it is, did this need to be an entire episode unto itself, or could this have been a little bit more like a half flashback, half move forward? Because where do we go now? Like, are we jumping back ahead again to like where we left off with episode 2? Because it feels a little disjointed in the narrative, right?
It definitely felt like we could have just cut pieces up and have it be through. So follow Osha for something for a little, but then you go back and see something in their past and come back to May and something happens and we go back. But yeah, it was a whole episode. And to get in kind of the part that, I don't know, it's my logical mind. We're talking about Star Wars and, you know, a witch coven and them using the Force differently, but we get to kind of the climax of the episode of where we find out, because we kind of found out in the first 2 episodes when they thought May was dead. We found out that May had, you know, caught their house on fire and killed everybody. But that was kind of the issue I had with this episode overall, was that ending, because we got May shows up, you know, they've both gone through the Jedi kind of training. So they were told to lie. They were given permission to go through it, but Osha really wanted to be a Jedi. She wants to leave. She wants to go on. And so they went through the training, and they knew she was lying because she couldn't help but try to correct. That wasn't you lying to us? Yeah, I mean, that was kind of fun. We got that back of, you know, they're not looking at a screen, and they got to tell you what's on the screen type of deal. But it was after that, you know, May kind of shows up to her room as Osha's packing, and she's like, I'm not going to let you do it. I'm just going to kill you. And like, well, that's very quick for the twin just to go from, all right, I don't want you to do it. Well, now I'm going to kill you. In probably the least logical thing that's going to happen. Their whole fortress here is stone and metal.
Yeah.
And so she lights a book on fire in front of the metal door, and it sets the entire compound on fire.
That's inflammable.
I had a big issue with that just because there's fabrics and there's things around, but I mean, this is a stone and metal, very large place, and she caught the entire place by dropping a booklet in front of a metal door.
How dare you bring logic into this?
That's, my brain couldn't get past the logic of that. It's just like, but the door's made out of metal. This is stone. Look, it caught wiring and stuff on fire. But then all of a sudden, the whole place is on fire.
I get it. The practicality of it is a little absurd, no doubt. It's definitely absurd. My issue with it was more of the narrative placing of the entire story, right? And in my mind, when you get episodes like this that feel like so out of place when you're moving a narrative along, it takes me back, and I know some people that watch this are gonna probably thinking of this and are glad that I'm gonna bring this up. It feels very much like the episode of Stranger Things that's very polarizing for people too, right? Where you have the classic story of, we're doing this entire story, and then here's a left turn with 11 going on this random adventure. It has no place in the entire narrative that they're trying to tell, right? So it's a very divisive episode too, but it feels like it fell into that trope that a lot of these shows go through, where like, we clamor so much for backstory, but they give us an entire episode of backstory that we necessarily didn't ask for. And it's a hard line to walk, but I feel like they did it in such a way that I feel like, because it's an episodic, like, weekly drop, if you're following it week to week, it's going to feel out of place. And from what I've read, I don't like to read spoilers ahead of time before I watch things, but some of the discourse that I've seen coming out of watching it, you know, I take a lot of it with a grain of salt when it comes to Star Wars, because the niche thing is,
especially with this series,
nobody
they have
hates
been
Star
attacking
Wars.
this series like crazy.
Nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans is the running joke. But, you know, it feels they fall into camps that you and I are kind of viewing the show through. Some people feel like the narrative took an unnecessary left turn completely when it could have just maybe veered a little bit off the path and worked its way back. And then also the practicality of burning an entire building made of metal and stone down with a flame. It seemed a little absurd too.
But yeah, because kind of going back to that, we are kind of left after her fire, that pretty much the entire coven is dead. But no one's on fire, nothing like that. Like, that's where I feel like we need another episode. And because we saw, was it Tobin took the poison and apologized. There feels like there's something else that has to be revealed there, because there doesn't feel like a way that all the witches died to fire. They were laying in piles in the middle of rooms. It felt like, were they killed by the Jedi? Was it not the fire that killed them? That feels like we feel like we're going to get another episode that explores from the Jedi perspective and shows us that, well, they ended up killing everybody, and May just kind of May started the fire, but she didn't kill everyone.
And that's the hard thing when it comes to a limited series like this, is you're dedicating episodes to filling in these holes in this narrative that I think you could possibly be potentially better filled in smaller batches within an overall episode. Yep. You know what I mean? So that's a little bit my complaint. It's not ruining my enjoyment of the series so far. I appreciate that they did it. It's just I have some small bickers about how they went about it. So
yes, I thought they started off strong with the first two, and this just kind of like grounded to a halt.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And yeah, where do we go from here? Because hopefully, if I'm right, and they're going to show the Jedi perspective and show that they didn't die to the fire, it was a Jedi who did it, and that's why, they're how they are about this situation. That it's not a whole another episode, because I think it's 8 episodes long, and if we have 2 full episodes dedicated just to the backstory, that just seems kind of a waste.
It's overkill. Mm-hmm. It's overkill, and I hope you're wrong, and I hope we don't get that. Yeah. But I mean, it's because we don't know if there's going to be a season 2, right? So I hope there is, but it's yet to be determined. But like you said, this is just episode 3 of 8. Mm-hmm. If we got another backstory episode, that only leaves 5 more episodes of 4 or 5 episodes of main narrative story. That's not a ton.
Yeah, because we still got two Jedi still alive, that we have a soul, and with our Wookiee Jedi that we got to see a little bit more, but he was kind of more of a side piece. He was just, all the other Jedi are inside of the ship, and he's just casually outside fixing all the equipment and stuff out there, like, because he's posted up. If something goes wrong, he's on the outside. Not everyone's on the inside, but I'll just fix this speeder bike. Oh, hey. Okay, go back and fix another speeder bike. Like I love seeing a Wookiee Jedi, but like give us a little bit more. We got 2 small hints of him in 2 episodes so far. Like I'm ready to see some Wookiee Jedi action.
I hope we get it. I hope we get it at some point too. It definitely needs to pick up, and I'm hoping starting with episode 4 it does, and kind of gets back to moving this along forward and giving us a little meatier story that we can hopefully enjoy. But that is episode 3 of The Acolyte. All 3 episodes are now out on Disney Plus, so we're looking forward to the next episode that we will be reviewing next week. I want to move on now to our movie review of the week, which was Disney Pixar's Inside Out 2. It's a sequel to the very popular Inside Out film, and it really picks up right where Inside Out 1 leaves off. And now you've got the main girl, Riley, is becoming a teenager, and the premise of the story is she's going to a hockey camp to try to earn her way onto her high school hockey team. So with that comes the new set of emotions. She's becoming a teenager, going through the life changes that you go through when you become a teenager, and some of the complex emotions that you start to become more cognizant of as you get older, like anxiety and some other ones that get introduced. And I gotta say, man, like, I don't have kids, but I still really enjoyed this film. Like, they do a really good job of, like, just so smartly taking these emotions and making them like individual characters. And it's just as strong, in my opinion, as the first film.
Oh, yeah, and it's kind of crazy. It's been like 9 years since Inside Out came out, and of course, we're a year, and so it's from 12 to 13 with the movie. But yeah, this shows why Pixar is Pixar. Like, they know how to handle something with comedic flair, but also heart and emotion, and making it really enjoyable by anybody, because it can hit you in different ways. Like, for me, being a dad and having a preteen now, there was so much I saw that, this is what my girl's gonna be going through here, and my niece who's gonna be a teenager this year, like, this is kind of the stuff, and they touch on it. Like, I saw some discourse of people saying that, well, it's not psychologically correct, and how it's not supposed to be. It's emotions, how you view them, how they feel to you, not the actual clinical medical way. It's how you feel. And like, anxiety felt like anxiety, and embarrassment felt like embarrassment. But like you said, they are able to shape all these different characters from Riley and her friends and all the emotions in such a great way. Like, it just shows the brilliance of Pixar. And like, I really loved it. Like, the pacing was great. We got, a good amount of the new emotions. We got a decent enough story with the old emotions, but it made sense why they were, sent to the back of the mind, because we're at a new stage. There's more complex emotions, and they have to focus on that, but it tells such a great, well-rounded kind of message of, yeah, as you grow up, you're going to have a lot more emotions and you're going to have a lot more changes, but you can't forget about everything else. You can't forget about yourself because you're growing up. And that's kind of something I talked to my daughter about. I'm like, did you get this? Did you get why they do that? And it's like, you're growing up and things are going to change. You're going to think differently and everything else, but don't forget about being a kid. Don't forget about the friends and everyone you've made along the way. Like, there's part of growing up, but not forgetting yourself.
Yeah, and that's the big theme around like the story they were trying to tell, and I love that message that they're sending. Like, so you have your sense of self that's formed very early in your life, and you're like, your basic foundation of who you are as a human being, and then as you start to deal with these additional emotional complexities, like your sense of self does change, but they do a good job of saying like, okay, you're going to completely lose this sense of self, and you're going to form a brand new one and completely lose who you are to become who you're going to be moving forward, right? And that's the fun story that they tell, and I love at the end how they just bring all of it together to like not lose that youthful exuberance that you do have, but also, it's okay to feel these things and process them in emotion and process these emotions, and it's going to help form who you are moving forward, right? And accepting that it's okay to kind of marry the two, and it's a really well done story that like, yeah, you're going to have these complex emotions that are going to, force you to react in certain ways that you wouldn't react to before. But at the same time, you're eventually going to go back to those old emotions. Like some of those emotions feel very, like, for lack of a better term in the film, basic, right? You have your base set of emotions like joy and sadness and anger. Like, but then you take some of these more complex ones, like ennui was one of my favorites. It's just like, yeah, it felt very lackadaisical, cool, didn't care. Like, like I love one of my favorite little side quotes that she says towards the end of the film is, "She's bored, but she's not boring." Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Which was a really cool line that I really appreciated. But, yeah, it just does such a good job of telling, like, giving a face to these emotions and creating characters, like you said, that are realistic enough that you said they don't necessarily meet the medical definition or the clinical definition of what the term is, but it is a practical way of how you process those emotions, right? And how your brain works and how it, feels these things and how you feel anxiety and how you feel depression and how you feel envy and, it in such a practical way that made sense in this story. It was such brilliant writing. I loved it so much just from that. It's very smart writing, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, absolutely smart writing because, it's centered on a female and around other female characters, but as a guy, I feel like we could really connect to a lot of the stuff, especially with anxiety and embarrassment and other stuff. Like, you can really connect with it no matter what gender or anything else. Like, you can connect with this story because I went through that. Yeah, I went through that. Mine was similar, but I also love the end joke, which I had to joke with my wife about, like when you got a little, and this is slight spoilery, but it's not really to the story, but you get a look into other characters' heads and stuff. So you get mom and you get dad, and of course dad is very stereotypical dad, which I had to laugh about. Like he's trying to think about stuff. Oh no, what is this? Okay, back to sports.
I love it. But it was so funny, though, because like you said, it was the end. The last scene of the film, this isn't spoiler by any means. She goes to a hockey camp and she comes home and she's at the table with her parents. And they ask her how it went. And she just says, "It was fine." It's the only 3 words they give her. And then you see how the mom processes that with her emotions. And it's just like, what do you mean? Like, she went through all these life changes. She's come back. She's different. She's got... slight spoilers. She's got a streak in her hair. Like, what's going on? And like you said, they cut to the dad, and it was like, it's such a guy thing, I think, but it made perfect sense, and that's what I mean by smart writing. When it was just like, oh, she's gone. He says the same thing, like his emotions, which are very funny plays on, I like the little mustaches and everything too. It was really funny. But they were like, she was gone for 3 days, and all we get was that was fine. It's like, does that check out? Yeah, it makes sense. Back to sports. So like, I love the practicality of it because it's so funny. We're just like it's a fun, like you said, stereotypical that men don't process emotions the same way, and it's just like, it was fine. Like, we accept it was fine way more often than
Yeah, and it was very stereotypical teenage response because we just went through an entire movie that's going on about her complex emotional state, and it was good. But probably my favorite part of the movie, because I've still got an 8-year-old, and we're getting out of the little kid stuff, but I got a nephew who's, 5 now and everything, but I'm not going to go deep into it, but there are some jokes that probably hit parents a whole lot more than without, and especially deals with like kind of the Blues Clues and the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and Dora the Explorer, that kind. I was losing it when they were doing that. Like I could hear all the parents in the theaters just cracking up to what they did with that, kind of new special character, and I'm like, all right, they went there. They went a little dark with it too, and it was just great. Yeah, this was just a brilliantly done film. Like Pixar just it goes back, like I said, with Toy Story and with Monsters Inc. and Finding Nemo and all that stuff. Like there's just such a brilliant storytelling, amazing heart, lot of humor, touching, emotional, and stuff that hits kids and parents differently. And it's very important to my oldest daughter and my niece. So this is kind of what they're going through. And we had one of my daughter's friends with us too, who's the same age. So it's like, this is stuff they're dealing with. This is something that's kind of hitting at the right time for my kids. So like, well, that's what you're dealing with. And there's a big part at the very end that we basically see, again, this isn't really a spoiler, but we see Riley have a panic attack.
Sure.
And we got to see what that looked like on her and from within. And it was I think a great visual representation of anxiety and a panic attack.
And that's awesome that what I love about this is that it does hit home for you, being so close to that, having, a daughter and a niece that are of that age that can really relate to this. And I'd love to hear, like, without going into like any personal information or anything, obviously, but like what conversations came out of that for you guys? Like, how did you talk about the film with them? Like, how did they perceive it? Did they feel like it was an accurate representation of things they're going through, or was the message of the film kind of hitting them in the way that?
I think in a way, like we didn't go too deep into it. We kind of talked as we went out, but it was like, because I kind of asked, did you get what was happening during the panic attack? Do you know what that means and what that was? And do you see kind of how, this is how complex your emotions are going to get. You're going to have something called anxiety that we deal with. And kind of when we didn't go extremely deep, but she got it and she understood it and she loved the movie, but I tried to touch on the deeper adult aspects of it to like, hey, this is something you're going to be dealing with. That's not, even though it's an over-the-top fun animated movie, it's something you're going to really be dealing with here in the next couple of years. And I think she processed that a good bit while we talked about it.
I love that, and I love that you can have that conversation coming out of this, because like you said, it hits for you at the right time because of that. And I do love going, and I went and saw that movie by myself, obviously, but I was in a theater full of parents with their kids, and I love when the parent jokes hit, like where the parents really get it and the kids may not necessarily laugh, but the parents are cracking up. And I'm glad you mentioned the Blues Clues aspect of it, because there is kind of a very much Blues Clues-ish type, over the top. Do you have anything in your pouch that could help us with this situation?
Very Mickey Mouse Clubhouse for us, but it's also some Blues Clues. Like, there's a big mix of all those preschool age, and it was just.
And the parents were laughing hard at those scenes. Like, I could feel where they're,
how many thousands of hours of Mickey Mouse Clubhouse we had, and
I love it though. But it was fun. I really like the Deep Dark Secret one, where the Deep Dark Secret could have gotten out, and he closed the vault and he said, "Not yet, not for or whatever." And then we're like, "Yeah, we're just gonna gloss past that and keep moving like that. Like it's not that time."
Does bring up there are extra credit scenes, so there's kind of a mid credit and an end credit, so there's some extra bonus scenes, and there's a little bit of kind of outtakes too as the credits are starting to roll, so there is enough to warrant kind of staying to the very end, but also to show the brilliant staff of Pixar, which hopefully we don't know how many of these were affected by the cuts and stuff that happened, but this was a brilliant family film that could be enjoyed by parents and non-parents alike. Like they did a great job. This is kind of true to form Pixar that we all absolutely loved. And there was also a very deep joke for adults as well when it came to Apple. So there's a scene of something being thrown because, if you don't know it that well, Steve Jobs was pretty much responsible for Pixar beginning, who started Apple and everything else. So there's a very deep Apple joke buried within the movie, and I might have been the only one cracking up because I'm a big Apple user and stuff, and I was a big fan of Steve Jobs as well. But I saw that joke. Oh, that's a deep cut for parents. Like kids are going to laugh at it, but they're not going to know what that meant.
Right. I love it too. And then I particularly love the over the top video game character that was also represented. I think Lance was his name.
Parents were laughing so hard at that as well because that was like PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 era type of character, but his super move.
So funny. If old school gamers are going to love that because it's just such an accurate representation of that type of character.
Just that there's pixelation to him. The mouth wasn't exactly fully synced up at times on purpose.
I was audibly laughing at when they were trying to get out of the vault and he was trying to walk out of the vault and he was walking into like
he walked into the wall
and he couldn't. And he was still trying to walk and talk at the same time and he had to move over to get.
How many times did we have that in video games in the 90s? How many times did we run into wall? Wait, there's an invisible. Why can't I get through this door?
It's such an attention to detail thing that I really appreciate, and it had me like audibly laughing harder than any other moment.
Such great deep cut jokes to adults. Like kids will get so much entertainment. My kids were laughing at his super move and everything as well. But that's definitely another like really deep cut joke for 30, 40-year-olds now who can look back on like, oh yeah,
that takes me back. Yeah, I love it.
But yeah, Inside Out 2 was just it's classic Pixar. It is such a touching, well-told story, a lot of humor, a lot of heart, and a really great message. Like it really hits its message home well. The original cast of the, emotions do such a great job of kind of taking a back seat, but on purpose, and there's a reason for it. But also how they kind of bring everything back in the end, and the new emotions. All of them are great, but I still have such a love for Sadness because it's Phyllis from The Office, and just hearing her voice and having her in there, I just absolutely love having Phyllis be a part of that and being sad. And her voice, I can't think of anybody else who could voice Sadness like she could, and she got a decent little role in this as well.
And I love the development in all of the characters in that, even the emotions themselves, who you could just easily shoehorn into a box and present them a certain way, but there's character growth from them as well. And it's like I said, it's so well done, such smart writing that they just knocked it out of the park. I think it was really good.
I don't know why it just popped in my head now about the sarcasm.
Yes, the actual sarcasm.
Like that was just it's goofy and silly and over the top, and parents will get what it is a whole lot more. But it was just a goofy, silly, fun little bit that they decided to do that just fit so well.
It does. We're so glad you're here. Like these guys are jerks. I love it. It's smart and it's so.
That was what John Ratzenberger got another cameo. It was. Yeah. So I can't remember if his streak is still active with Pixar, but he got his moment there. But yeah, Inside Out 2 is in theaters right now. It is well worth the time to check out. Take your kids, especially if you have preteens or early teenagers. I think there's going to be a great message for parents, a great message for those preteens and teenagers, but kind of for anybody. Like it's it's one of the best animated movies I've seen in a long time because they just handled everything so brilliantly, and I think they balanced everything so well, and it's well worth checking out. And it seems like a lot of people agreed with us because it's looking like it's having $125-150 million domestic opening as kind of we're looking at it and talking right now. Like it's going to have a big weekend, and it well deserved to have that.
Absolutely, it's one that. You don't even like I said, I don't have kids, and I went and saw it by myself, and I had a blast watching it. It was a really good time, and it's definitely going to do very well. I know you and I went to different showings, and both of our showings were pretty much sold out almost completely. So I'm glad to see that doing well. You love to see these types of films, bringing out the families and making the trek out to see this. And it seemed like everybody that I went to the theater with enjoyed it as well. So it seems like it's going to do really well, and I'm happy for it.
Like I said, it's a return to form for Pixar, even though I loved Elemental and some other stuff they did. But, I mean, this is what we expected of Pixar. When they put out a movie, it was beloved and it was packed. And we're kind of finally back to that after so much stuff being tossed onto streaming and having mixed. Like, it feels like maybe Pixar's finally...
I love it.
Finally turned that corner that COVID caused them to have a kind of a hard time with. But, yeah, I just absolutely loved it. Go check it out. It's worth seeing in theaters. Can't say enough good things about it.
Yep, we absolutely loved it, and it's well worth your time going to see.
So coming into theaters this week is quite a different movie. So we got The Bike Riders with Austin Butler and Tom Hardy. So part of that was filmed in Cincinnati here, so I'm excited to kind of see that. But, it's a dark, gritty movie that's going to be violent and very adult. We also have Kinds of Kindness, which is the next film from the director of Poor Things, which... I was very mixed on Poor Things, but this one looks like it could be interesting. It's definitely not Poor Things, but
sure.
He definitely has his quirky style to it, and it's continuing on in that.
Yeah, definitely one worth checking out. I don't know if I'll make it to theaters to see it, but I do plan on checking it out for sure.
Coming to streaming is Trigger Warning on Netflix on June 21st. So this is actually Jessica Alba's first kind of big starring role in a film in I think like 8 or 9 years. Like it's been quite a while because she became a mom and took time away from Hollywood. Now she's back doing this film. I don't know. I've seen the trailer for it. Don't know how kind of big it's going to be, but I'm going to check it out because I enjoy Jessica Alba and see kind of what her return is going to look like.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely one I'm planning on watching as well as soon as it comes out for sure.
Yeah, On Demand, If is going to be available for digital purchase on June 18th, which it hasn't had a box office that we thought it might because I love the film. I thought it was similar to Inside Out 2, that it did a brilliant job of talking about death and imagination and not losing your childhood. And, as you grow up, you don't have to completely lose your childhood. You can continue being a child and hold on to that even as an adult. And I thought it was a great film, but it just didn't hit like already Inside Out 2 is. I think it might now just be crossing the $100 million mark, and I think it had 160 or something budget. So it's definitely losing money, and it's kind of sad because I thought it was a great film and didn't really deserve to have such a low box office. Yeah,
it's a little disappointing, but you can go back into our archives to see our full take on the film, but I feel If is going to be one of those movies that probably won't be it's going to get a little more cult-like status. I think eventually the people, like once it makes its way onto streaming, it might get a little more traction and people will be like, man, I really wish I'd have gone out and seen that in the theaters. But yeah, it feels like it's one that people didn't like rush out to see, but I think it's going to do a lot better when it makes its way on the streaming.
I hope so. I hope it finds its life on digital here and streaming, and people give it kind of the recognition it deserved. I don't know. As a parent and everything else, I just really enjoy, and I love John Krasinski too. But I thought he did a great job with it. So, yeah, hopefully it finds a good life on digital and kind of gets the recognition. Lastly, we have a new Orphan Black series coming out. So Orphan Black Echoes is on AMC, BBC America on June 23rd. So I never got into the Orphan Black series, but I know that it has a huge following, and it the original series did fairly well and was around for a little bit. And so to see that they're bringing back with Echoes here, like hopefully for the fans of that series, it does a great job with kind of revisiting that world.
Yeah, I never really got into it either, but I know several people who really, really enjoyed the series. So I'm excited for them to get this back. I might check it out, check a couple episodes out, see if I like it and give it a shot. And who knows, I might go back and watch some of the old stuff as well too. So definitely one worth checking out. But that's going to do it this week for the podcast. We can't thank everyone enough for their continued support. Please go like our YouTube channels, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff that I don't like to say all the time. But yeah, go and check that out. We have merch. Go to willbringthepopcorn.com for all our social information, all our merch, everything that you can find out from us on that. We appreciate your continued support. Next week, we are going to be reviewing Episode 4 of Star Wars: The Acolyte on Disney+, as well as the new Tom Hardy and Austin Butler film, The Bike Riders. We're very excited to check that one out as well. But until next time, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we'll see you next week.